notice, a copy of a notice specifying the date, time, and location was 1 posted on the bulletin board outside Borough Hall, 2 mailed, fax, or emailed to the Courier News, and 3 given to the clerk administrator. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Roll call.
Bernie McCullough.
Here.
Peter Rosinski.
Here.
Dennis Holt.
Here.
Randall Brady.
Here.
Jason Kraska.
Here.
Al Caressi.
Here.
Larry Cleveland.
Here.
Andrea Dare, Art Akins, and Christopher Addick will not be present this evening.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a resolution for approval.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. No comments? Go ahead. Roll call.
Peter Rosinski.
Yes.
Dennis Holt.
Yes.
Randall Brady.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
Al Caressi.
Yes.
Larry Cleveland.
Yes. No, for the record, I abstain.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a summary of the cottage food operator permit from Mike Cole. He also included a copy of our home ordinance that allows home office use. And then he goes into some analysis. And I think that's kind of where I'd like to start, because Mike brings up some very valid points. The kitchens and residences are not going to be inspected by the Department of Health, and it's not clear how that's going to be enforced. And if there is an inspection done, I mean, it says farther down in the state rules that local authorities can go in and inspect, but it's not clear about what the cause of that would be. And I think it also, it throws the burden of any inspection on the borough.
And the cost.
And what?
And the cost.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no way to tell what number of applications, applications we would get.
Right. And how are you going to enforce things like annual sales?
Yeah, there's no way to enforce that.
Right. I think this is, in general, the state permitting process is poorly crafted, and there's nothing in here that convinces me that it's a good idea, because there's no control over anything, and whatever control there is going to be, we're going to have to do it and pay for it. So
It seems like it's an honor system from step A to Z. Talking about the income that you can produce. You cannot have children in the kitchen
Right.
while this activity is going on. If it's a residential kitchen, you're
right.
part of working, having a home business is that you are there with your kids.
Now,
What happens when your toddler crawls in?
Right.
You stop what you're doing, and again, and your dog, it says you can't have pets. Your dog walks through the kitchen. What do? Stop your whatever it is you're preparing. It's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, but in the details, it's unmanageable.
And our ordinance says for home businesses that the space used for a home business has to be exclusively for that business. Now, I can understand if you were doing computer work in it, but a kitchen's a kitchen. It's part of the family it's the hub of the household. So how do you say, well, you can't be in the kitchen, well, because it's only for home business? Because then commercial ovens are very heavy. Now, who's going to put a commercial oven in the house if that house may not be able to sustain the weight of that oven? It's ludicrous. So this draft allows for things that our present ordinances do not allow for. So we would not only have to modify, but we would have to adopt this ordinance. We would have to change the one that requires you can't use it for other things other than what you intended for,
Right.
and you don't have to put in a commercial oven.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the state did their thing, and they put the one line in there saying that they have to meet the town's requirements. We have the home. Again, at the end of the day, I don't think somebody who wants to bake a couple cakes and take them to the farmer's market's a big deal, in my opinion. I don't think it's a huge issue. Looking at the items that Mike put together, and for example, there's no way to track that $50,000. But I don't think we don't track what any business is doing. And the brewery in town, Village Brewery, they're only allowed to make so many containers to still be considered a brewery. We don't track that. That's the state. It's their responsibility, and I don't worry myself with that portion of it.
What the state's doing here is it's throwing the enforcement burden on the local municipality. And what do you do if the use becomes a nuisance? They've got a state permit, and we modify our ordinance to allow it. So how do you now control it?
Again, I'm not saying I have a great solution for it. Sad to hear that Mike's in Italy. I had some questions for him on it.
I think our recommendation should be that no changes be made.
The way I understand it now, can an applicant go to the zoning board and ask for a waiver? Because it's a non-permitted use.
Yeah, they would have to go to the zoning board.
So they do have that option.
Right.
Tony, you had a question or comment on that? Have we had any interest?
None whatsoever.
We had none.
Where is it? We do have applicants.
Yeah.
That have been approved by the state.
And they're waiting to hear back from us.
According to Kevin's email, 500 plus permits requires local approval as well. We can't approve any because it's newly allowed and it's been incorporated into our ordinance or decided not to incorporate. I mean, one of the questions I have is, if we're not going to consider this a home office use, I mean, how do we designate which residential areas allow it and which don't? I mean, then I think you're getting into a potential discrimination issue because, why if you live on this street can you do it, but if you live over here you can't?
No, I think it has to be open to the whole. Open to the whole town.
Exactly.
I have a problem with grouping it in with a home office because it's not a home office.
It's not a home office.
And I think that some of the regulations we have for home office don't coincide with baking in your kitchen or whatever. So I don't think we can kind of treat it like a home office. It's its own separate.
It would have to have its own separate line.
That would be allowed in any zone.
Any zone.
Where, if those
Criteria
met.
met. Right. Kind of like the home office, just
Correct.
the cottage food.
What if I'm a landlord and I have a tenant who wishes to do it then, and I say, that's fine, go ahead, you can cook good stuff in here, just make sure you don't burn the place down. But the owner of the property is off-site and the tenant does it. Personally, I think we should, if this is the permit that they have to fill out, I think we should pretty much be silent on it. Because it talks about health benefit, you have to wash your hands, you can't, the things that are necessary for food preparation. And if we have an ordinance, there are no local ordinances zoning that prevent me from operating a home-based food business. If we don't have any ordinance, then I think we're probably in a better position. Because once we have an ordinance, we are obligated to enforce it. And should we not enforce it, then we have a liability. The problem as I see it, since the
state has been so generous in allowing us to make a decision on this, I think we should make a decision that the state should have made, which is not to make a decision.
Yeah, my concern, and Grant anticipated my question.
There's a lot of back
You
and
have-
forth
you have
there.
an
I'm still wrapping my head around all of that,
You
Grant.
have an apartment building, for instance, just to use one as an example, apartment, 170 apartments. Suppose everybody decides they're gonna have a whole kitchen. Well, now it's not just one truck delivering flour once a week. Is there any component in here where the landlord has to sign off? It doesn't really.
Well, I think that would be the ordinance we would be,
Yeah, it doesn't.
the town would be doing,
It
not the
doesn't
state.
differentiate between, owned and rented. And,
But I think we could, and I think that's where they're leaving it to the town to say, if you meet the town's requirements. So the town can have an ordinance that says only in single-family homes. Is it
I'll
permitted?
wind up in court on that one.
That's what I'm saying, that's the concern that I have now.
But no
So
rentals or-
you could certainly say that the owner of the property, if you're a tenant, has to sign the
Has to approve it,
application.
yeah.
Right.
You know,
would be
that you
reasonable.
could,
Some of us at the table may remember a 2-hour discussion we had years ago about Avon and Girl Scout cookies and Fuller Brush being a home business. That was before your time. You remember? Larry, I think you.
Sounds kind of familiar.
And we got off on a tangent and we just said, let's just go away.
Brush, or
Yeah.
in the last century.
Well, there are some of us that remember the Fuller Brush man.
Are we required to take action on this?
That's not my understanding, no, you have the ability to say,
We're just making a
this is
record.
not something we want to allow. Now, it gets a little dicey because what you could then end up getting before, or the zoning board could end up getting before, is then an interpretation as if you do nothing and you don't address and specifically say that it's not, the borough is specifically not allowing this use within its boundary lines, then you get applicants, if they want to be creative, go in before the zoning board and say, well, is this a home office? And I want an interpretation from the zoning board as to whether this is a home office or not. Right. And then you leave it open. So I think it makes sense to do something if the board or the council feels strongly one way or another, because by doing nothing, you leave yourself open to that interpretation.
It's a case-by-case situation.
Well, I think once the zoning board says, we're looking at this as a home office, then the cat's out of the bag.
You could always say that this particular approval for this particular operation does not fall within the home office definition.
I
That's
think
what
you
you're
have to say,
addressing
I
it
think you have to call
I
it
think
cottage
that
foods.
if we're gonna do nothing, what we need to do is modify Schedule A and put this use in there
Correct.
and say, not permitted.
Yep.
Across the board.
Correct. Then that way you can get out of
What
that.
happens if somebody wants to open one up? Is it not-
Then you go
It's
before the
not-
zoning
not
board.
permitted use.
And do we
They
face
go
a
get it.
problem with the state which allows it? Can we preempt the state?
Look at it as cannabis.
Huh?
Look at it as a cannabis ordinance.
Same thing, you could not have it in your town.
But cannabis, okay.
You had the option of whether opt in or opt out.
Yeah, but this isn't an option, this is.
I don't think that's that option.
Well, meaning that you could decide that that's not something that you wanted to have.
In the state one, it says that it has to be compliant with all local ordinances.
Correct.
So if we have, and again, I'm more towards the opposite. I think we could draft an ordinance, in my opinion, to, I don't want to say regulate it all, because you're never going to regulate everything with it. But I also don't see it as a huge issue. I mean, if I have a barbecue every weekend at my house, I'm cooking for more people than hypothetically this ordinance would allow.
Yeah, but you're not charging.
You never know.
Well, correct. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, all these issues, if I have a barbecue at my house every weekend, I'm bringing traffic in. I have to continuously bring people in and out. I'm cooking. There's fumes. There's all that additional stuff. There's more, and there's nothing against it. I think we could, if we wanted, draft an ordinance for the council to look at that addresses a lot of these items. I wish Mike was here because I had questions on how the other towns who have this. I mean, have there been any complaints through the state since they opened this up and 500 people have applied? and my understanding is also that every other state already has this, with the, tail end,
Yeah.
which is fine. I just don't know what the, is there that actual issue with all of them that can't be addressed in an ordinance that we could draft?
You can address it, but how do you enforce it?
Well,
But how do you enforce, I mean, we say that, but we don't enforce, we don't enforce half the stuff that's on here with our restaurants. We assume they're doing it, but we don't go in and check to see if they're washing their hands or if everybody's healthy.
And that's kind of my point.
Yeah, we're getting a little nitpicky here, and like the weight of the stove, that's building code.
But that is a health department issue at that point.
Yes, but we don't check it every day. We check it when there's a
But
complaint.
we contract with an entity that is a health department, and that is the responsibility they have. They have to give a certificate of it's a restaurant. This is a totally different thing.
Can that be delegated there?
But why can't they? Why can't it be like a restaurant where you basically get a visit once a year? Look, everything looks good. We're done unless there's a complaint. That's how we do the restaurants.
Yeah, but restaurants get inspected at least annually.
That's what I'm saying. So inspect these annually. I'm just saying, why are you treating these people who are trying to do a home cottage like they're going to break every rule when we don't treat the restaurants like they're going to break every rule? That's my problem with this. Is we're kind of getting a little nitpicky over somebody who wants to have a home business who will follow the rules. The application is pretty, yeah, it's not a healthy thing. And in other states, this is done all the time, and people aren't dropping dead of major poisonings or anything. I think we are trying to overregulate the fact that some people might need to make some money out of their home right now.
I think you're right. I think that we are trying to make this thing something it's not. There's a fella in town who used to cook for a lot of church activities, and I guess he charged for, I don't know what he charged for, but he lived in town. He doesn't do it anymore because it was just not at all feasible for him. By the time he used gas, electric, and what have you, I'm not so sure these home-based businesses are going to stay in business very long. Secondly, my wife believes that most of these operations will probably sell the goods on the internet, or at least take orders on the internet and either ship or deliver. And that may be a possibility. How many people are going to go to your house and pick up their...
No, that's not usually how it's done. You're right. It's usually an internet business, or it's a catering type of thing where you make it and you bring it to it. A farmer's market. It's the same as, I know it's including food, but like there are other industries that people do out of their garage and things where they're making things and selling things, and we're not worried about regulating those. And so I'm not quite sure why we're picking on the cottage food industry.
We could say that this is a permitted use as per state regulations, but according to the, and not put actually put in the operator permit as part of an ordinance, and that's it. And not go into any of the details that we have been talking about the last few minutes, because you're right, it's not enforceable. We're not going to enforce it.
Well, we do an inspection once a year, and you charge the person, I'm sure if it's onerous on our health department, then there's a fee for
the other
getting
issue
inspected.
is our health department is a contract. We don't have a health department. That's nothing that has been enumerated in that contract and would probably be renegotiated at this point. So this isn't simply a thing for one or two cases, it's not going to matter. But if we had a whole slew of them, then it could be an additional burden on the
But that's what I'm saying. So there is, in our ordinance that we add to this, there's a fee for health inspections.
Now, maybe we could assess an annual fee.
Exactly. That's something
like we
can
do with the
handle.
home inspections for single and two-family homes that we have, the rental homes, okay? When
Yeah,
we go and
exactly.
check the fire code.
Right.
Maybe that would be something, but
And the ABC licenses and
Right.
the gaming licenses.
that would at least allow us perhaps entry to inspect it once a year through the fire marshal. Because basically what we're looking at, we're not going to test the food to see if it's tolerable, okay? That's just not something we're gonna do.
Right.
The health department's gonna look and try and see if it meets whatever criteria there are. But we wanna make sure they don't burn the house down.
Question is, then what zones do we do?
You have to do it for every.
Yeah.
It has to be,
Yeah.
it has to be all the Rs and all the
Residential.
Bs, B1, B2, industrial, it'd have to be in all zones. Otherwise, we're gonna wind up with of First Amendment.
I mean,
you've got the protection in here because it says it has to be within an individual dwelling, and even if you allowed it across the board in a lot of those zones, it's not going to.
it's not going to be able to be
It's
done.
not gonna matter, so we basically can accept this document and what it said as the way that we allow it without having it as, because what Bernie's saying is we don't allow the home-based businesses. Well, we don't allow the home-based businesses as we write it, but these particular enterprises would be outside of that. And then we reference to state requirements and what's necessary for the state.
And you're saying you can contract with the health department to do these inspections the same way
Well,
we do restaurant inspections?
Not without discussing it with them.
That would be an
because
amendment.
I wouldn't do the health department, I would do the fire marshal.
Why would you do the fire marshal?
No, it's got to be board.
They're not
Maybe
gonna
health
be able to-
Well, we don't have a board of health, okay?
Well,
We use the county? We use the county.
Last time I looked, we were negotiating with the county, but they're gonna charge us for additional services that we haven't budgeted in for.
Yeah, so you charge a fee to
An
the,
annual license, an annual permitting fee. that
I don't think we
incorporates
have
that
to
clause.
worry about the fire department because it specifically says in here that you are using, I forget where I just read it, but you're basically, you're using, you're not adding any more electricity or power to the house and things. So anything that's going to be in there
Is
is going
existing.
to be, or going to be,
You're using your kitchen, basically.
right, it's going to be domestic service. It's not like you're bringing in more wattage or something that might cause a fire. You're basically using, you know, appliances that are meant for domestic use.
We could put in there that there's an annual inspection for the Board of Health and the fee would be X amount of dollars.
So, I don't want to throw a wrench into this, but going by the state ordinance, if you look at number 6 for the state, subject to NJAC, blah, 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 to distribute cottage food products to consumers thereof without being subject to initial or periodic inspections by Board of Health. Now, then you go down to number 12, where it says that the Board of Health, that a health authority is authorized to enter upon exam and survey premise, including the home kitchen, cottage food operator, and their materials, equipment, books, records, blah, blah. So it kind of gives a double check. So I don't know if we picked it. What's that? It is. So I don't know if, and again, I guess the question is what are we treating it, you know, if we want to write an ordinance and say that, I don't think we can say that there's an initial inspection or an annual inspection based on number 6.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think we need to look at that again, because if you see it says, without being subject to initial and periodic inspection applicable to retail food establishments. So what they're saying is, I think,
We can't
we have to look at it.
treat it like a commercial
Exactly.
kitchen.
So if there are certain requirements applicable to retail establishments, those you can't apply. But it could be that what you're looking to apply is the same.
Is
I don't
what's on
know.
the
But okay,
application.
that bears
Requirements of
looking
the
at.
application.
All
You can't walk in and see dogs rolling around.
What do you
So
do?
how is it different if we have the retail establishment being monitored by the Board of Health, and we have the home kitchen monitored by the Board of Health? What's the difference there?
I'd like to look at that
Criteria.
code section,
Yeah.
what that requires. But
Different
I guess
criteria.
by using that language though, they're purposefully segregating retail food establishments from this. So, you know, if you want to do the same thing, it seems like you can't do the same, you need to do something different. But without knowing what that is, we can't evaluate what's different than what's the same.
What do we do when we discover someone is working out of their house in a home office? We don't allow home offices.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Do
we
they
do.
have to have a permit for it? Do they have to apply everything like that? So if you're running an office from your house, that's okay.
Until somebody complains.
Well,
And then we go in and.
Right, if someone, all of a sudden you have 6 people parking, you know. in
well,
front
this
of
is
the
exactly
street
what I'm
type
saying,
thing,
that we only react
When there's a complaint.
when there's
Yes.
complaint. So it's almost like, well, we don't know, if we don't know what's going on, we don't know what's going on. We'll wait until somebody complains.
Yeah, but on the home office, now, Carol and I have a home office in the sense that we do a lot of our business bookkeeping.
Sure. But you're
report
not
writing.
taking patients.
Patients don't come into that house, I've never had that happen, okay? I think I have 1 or 2 patients in the area that will come in if I have to see the colleagues. But the bottom line is, I don't see patients in my house. I see them in the office. But we do have a room in the house that's strictly for office work. I mean, we don't allow kids in there or anything like that.
And
That's a different type of a home office. I think that this is not in the same vein as that because it is essentially a manufacturing function. Then many of the home offices might be distribution. They might be like Avon. They don't make anything there. Girl Scout cookies. They don't make the cookies there. This is essentially manufacturing. What you're doing is you're manufacturing something and you're selling it retail. And there's a whole different process involved in that.
Leads me to the second thing. What if somebody does violate one of the rules? What is the punishment? Is there a fine?
And who does the punishing?
What is the fine for
that
me
would
cooking
Is
two
that a state level
cookies?
thing?
That would be in our ordinance.
No, we would have to, I agree with the mayor, I think we would
In
have to
our
write that
ordinance,
in.
in
Well, it's the
terms
same
of
thing, the home
food.
offices.
And how much?
What happens if somebody violates one of these, you know, code enforcement would go there and they'd get a violation and it would go from there.
Alright, so here's NJAC 8:24-1125. Okay, that's what's referenced, that's first part of
6.
Yep. Specifically says pursuant to blah, 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 a health authority is authorized to enter upon, examine, and survey any premises, including the home kitchen of a food operator. 2, 1, enforce or confirm compliance with any health law or other law under the official's jurisdiction and or to investigate complaints. So, and I think you've got the ability to do it, just you gotta write it the right way.
Yeah, that sounds a lot better than the language right here.
How do you define home office? Because I think that, you know, what Graham was saying is a place in your house that you work, like you said, versus an advertised home office.
Right, with a separate entry kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The ordinance for Somerville basically says it has to be completely separated, or it should not be separated. I don't know, the home office one, I don't think we should be based on that if we're going to do something.
Yeah, I just don't think it's the same as a home office.
Yeah, I don't think it should be based on that.
Especially with people working from home these days.
And that's why I think if we have
Home
a
office
cottage.
kind of needs to be redefined. Yeah.
How do you food permit? I mean, this is somebody who's manufacturing, who's cooking something.
Yeah, make it granola.
And none of what we've talked about really applies to this kind of thing, other than maybe we have them comply. If they comply with what's on the application, I think that should be part of whatever ordinance we would craft.
Well, they would have to comply with that anyway.
Yeah, I still think we're spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
We're just creating problems for the borough.
More work and more problems will be created.
Conversely, if every person that applies and is denied has to go to the zoning board, that puts an inordinate
Well, they're also
burden on the
you can only
applicant.
do $50,000 in sales a year, not profit. You're not going to the zoning board that's going to cost you $10,000.
So you'll do it without.
Exactly.
You'll do it
We
without.
have organizations, and we ask people in town when there's, I mean, granted it's emergency basis or whatever, but there's organizations that make trays of food and bring them and distribute them. They don't charge for them, but they do it. We're 100% okay
Doing
with
the
it.
same thing, yeah. And that's, my problem is, I just think, as a resident of Somerville with paying really high taxes, if I had the opportunity to make some money by making granola and taking it to a farmer's market, I don't think that that's something that I should not be allowed to do within the borough.
Bake a sweet 16 cake for an event. I don't see the issue with it. I don't think they're
My
manufacturing.
wife handles the ship food donations once a month, and she has volunteers who cook. And then they bring them over to the house, or they usually bring them to ship on High Street at a certain predestined time, and they serve them, and this is a charity. That's where it's done. Again, this is not terribly different from that. People are cooking once a month. Now, this is somebody who thinks they're going to make a living at it, might be a different story, but I agree with Deirdre. This is not a harmful thing that people are doing, and it's not a nefarious kind of thing. It's not like they're growing some things in the back that's selling.
Yeah, I'm not saying any of that, Grant. All I'm saying is that if we're gonna create an ordinance that we know up front it's going to be difficult and or impossible to enforce, what's the point?
What's the point?
So then
Exactly
what,
right.
so if we just don't have any ordinance,
Well, you're gonna want, it's my opinion, Mike's got to weigh in, but I think you're gonna want to do something, because if you don't say anything,
Then it's not allowed.
then
Then it's not a
then
permitted
it's not
use.
allowed, but again.
why is it
you
not
open yourself
allowed?
up
If
to
the
that
state says it's
interpretation.
allowed.
Because our ordinance says it's not as of now.
You're opening yourself, because your ordinance would say any use not specifically permitted is excluded. So if you don't have that specifically there, then it's gonna be excluded.
So we would have to create a cottage food category, cottage food industry category, like we have a home office category. for
To
use.
allow it or not, and
And then
avoid
once we create that
interpretation.
use, we have to have have it in the ordinance somehow. Okay, that's what I was trying to.
And I think we have to allow it. I mean, this is like the marijuana.
You don't have to allow
We don't have, we can actually say that we
It's a
will allow this
non-permitted use,
now.
but I don't think that's necessary. I don't think this is something
That'll just trigger a rash of applications to the zoning.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, if we get a certain amount of zoning board operations, we're always told to take a look at that and change it because it's something
Yearly
that
review,
everybody wants.
right, the yearly review.
So, I mean, we're just kind of
The zoning
postponing
board-
something we would have to
yeah.
probably do anyway.
If the zoning board is consistently granting relief,
So let's follow
Based
that
on our
thought.
zoning
Let's follow
ordinance.
Deirdre's thought a minute. If we say it's not allowed, only if it would be only allowed if you go to the zoning board and get approval of variance, if you will, and nobody ever comes before us, so we don't have to worry about it.
And the 20 applications in Somerset
Also,
County.
correct me if I'm wrong, if I as an individual wish to appear before the zoning board, I'm not a corporation, I'm an individual, I don't have to have legal representation, do I?
No.
So I
That's correct.
So it's free. In other words, what I'm saying to you.
So what's the argument to,
so
wait a minute,
it's-
but what's the argument to get the variance? What's the argument to get? the
Argument to get the variance would be,
Can't be voluntary.
the state approves this kind of thing, and, you know, there's no reason, what's your argument, Mr. Zoning Board, to not allow it to happen? I can comply with all of the requirements on this form, and then we
Is that being approved by the town?
and we could grant it because we indeed, they convinced us that they could.
Tony, can you give me an idea roughly?
You see what I'm getting at is.
I
this
do,
may-
but if that's the true argument, then we should just allow it.
Well, what I'm saying is this may end up being an ordinance that never has anybody tested. This may be better off if we see what comes in. If nothing comes in, or very little comes in, we can grant exceptions on occasion.
I understand where you're going with this, but as a layperson who doesn't understand any of the planning, zoning, everything, they're gonna see that they're not allowed to do it and they're gonna give up. They're not gonna say, oh, I'm gonna look into this and go to the zoning board and fight this on the way. This is someone who literally wants to make some granola and sell it at a farmer's market. These are not people who are gonna take the fight to the streets kind of
They're
thing.
gonna do it anyway. We all
That's
do
what, that's
things
what
that are
I,
against the law.
that's my
Yeah,
next
right.
question.
Someone-
If somebody is doing this, let me just ask the question now. There's probably somebody making pies and selling them at a farmer's market right now as we speak in Somerville.
Yes.
If we're not enforcing it, this law, how are we gonna know if somebody's doing it or not anyway? That's why I think it's just over-regulation, quite frankly. Because if it's that small an amount, unless you're bothering your neighbors and they make a complaint, no one's gonna know you're doing it anyway.
Tony, what's the cost for me as an individual to go to the zoning board?
Depends upon what the application is, depends upon how many variances you need.
There is a fee.
There is a fee. Probably the least expensive would be 200 application, 500 escrow.
For review by the professionals.
To come before the
And
board.
if I wanted to hire my own professionals, that's an additional cost I pay.
Correct.
So we're looking, just to come in and represent myself would be around $7.
That's the cheapest.
Yeah, $7 to $1,000.
Most times they tell people,
But to
Why
come in and
not?
say, the state allows this, so I wanna be able to do it in Somerville, when that's the argument now. If the state allows this, why are we not allowing it in Somerville?
The state
That's
also
very
has
good
some
argument.
pretty significant, I mean, prior to receiving a cottage food permit, the operator must complete New Jersey accredited food protection manager training.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do.
Most of the time, these kind of applications are they're not even realizing they're violating the law. They're thinking about, oh, it's a big deal, it's some pies for the farmer's market. They're not gonna care about me, I'm gonna make 10 pies. The person who goes out of the way to make 25 pies and has UPS deliveries, they're asking for scrutiny. Most of these people are gonna be just like, well, it's just me. It's the pies, what's the big deal? Just like every other thing that goes on, who fixes cars in their garage?
Lawnmowers. Lawnmowers.
Or whatever.
All those
And they get
industries,
money
yeah,
off.
yeah.
There's 1,000 places that do this kind of thing. I don't think that people who are looking to just do it a little bit are going to draw attention to themselves. And they're certainly not going to raise their hands and go, oh, let me go down to the town and tell them I'm baking 25 pies
Right.
a week.
And quite frankly, if
They're not
they're
gonna do
starting to do a volume, they're gonna need more than their kitchen at home.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
And
they're
that's
gonna have to
unfortunate
find a space to do
a regular-
it. So
And you're gonna need a lot of time.
I think
to
they're
do it.
counting on the limitation of a home kitchen,
Yeah.
that you cannot do a huge operation.
So, what are you saying?
So I think we can't just say it's not allowed in Somerville, because I think that's really,
Well, then we need to have some rules for getting inspectors in there and doing it the way it should be done.
And that to me is one of the biggest issues that we may have a problem with.
This is just going to be a hammer.
This is
when
not gonna be
somebody steps out of
the
line.
top of
It's not
that.
gonna be
This is not gonna be
first
the front
round.
burner
It's gonna
on
be an
anybody.
alternative round.
Inspectors are not, I mean, this is the kind of thing that, I just think the enforcement of this would be difficult. I just don't see that.
It would be complaint driven, first of all. I've got, you know,
And that's.
I've
like
got-
everything else,
Now,
yeah.
Complaint driven
like
more than
everything
anything
else.
else.
and that's why we have zoning control. You know, you have a truck or two a day on your street, no big deal. We all have.
I
So there-
just don't see.
But with volume, all of a sudden, you've got something's different. Yeah. Like
And then
in your
that's
case
why-
on your street with the group home. Yeah, it was a big change from when it was a private home to when it became a commercial enterprise. And I think that's the fear with zoning, is that all of a sudden, you know, 1 becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, and all of a sudden now it's a business operating in a residential
There's
area.
nothing to say.
I don't see this as a business. I'm just concerned about the enforcement. And hopefully it's quiet, clean, and invisible, and no one even knows it's there. But how do we ensure that?
The only way this gets enforced is when it comes up, and it's the complaint, and then the town has a way to react. Oh, you gotta do this, that.
Where's your
and the other.
state?
Why can't
Where's
we
your
have-
state
but
permit?
wait a minute.
What state
Yeah,
permit?
but
No,
where,
yeah.
why can't we have the state enforcement?
Are you kidding?
Well,
You want the state troopers?
well,
coming
it's
down?
there, it's the state's law right now, so why would they enforce the law if somebody's breaking it? Why
Because
are
it's
we
already
taking-
said, it's up to the town.
Right.
That's why.
State
However-
mandate, you play, and you pay. It's the same.
We could require that the people who have this, not only do they submit, who do they submit this application to, is the state. We could require that they have a registration to the borough. Basically, we want to know who's doing this.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we may be able to, not will, go and inspect. So if we have a list of people, kind of like what they're trying to do with the gun thing. You know, you're on a register, you're on a list. It doesn't mean you're gonna shoot somebody, just you're on the list. Maybe we have people, it's required that if you do this with the state, you must also register with the borough of Somerville. And part of that registration requires that you would open your facility to an inspector. You may be required to do that, but not on a particular schedule.
So again, I think that's item 12 in the state's thing, is that they'd have to allow us.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
it's already
and-
written into it, yeah.
And that would be it. And not say once a year, because I just don't see it happening.
No, I
agree.
think that's fine.
So then what we should do is make the state rules and the application fee part of our ordinance and require inspections. And my
happen.
Right. And the people should then have to submit the state application.
Yeah,
to the
copy
borough.
to the borough, yeah.
And the form that says, I understand that I'm registering this as my home business in Somerville.
That's on
and
the
that
form already.
I allow my.
That's already on
It's on
the,
there, okay.
yeah, I reside in the house that I'm working, it's all in there.
Simple as that.
There's already, I disagree.
People in town that are doing this already.
I agree, but there is 20 in Somerset County in the last month who have applied or whatever.
But I bet you they have a more structured reason why they're doing it. They're gonna do it from their house, but they have a bigger house, they have a bigger kitchen. They can afford an industrial oven.
Well, I think once you go to
This is
industrial
gonna
oven,
be- This is gonna be reactionary. Only gonna see this, because nobody's gonna go, oh, I want big pies for the county fair.
so
Sell them. Oh, let me call this town and say I'm gonna do this. Or the state.
No, this-
So people have
That's not gonna
shown,
happen.
so it did come up in Somerville already.
I was just reading the article.
It's already come up in Somerville. There's an article really bashing the town
Yes.
about how difficult they're making it.
Yes,
For somebody who went to the town and said, I want to do this the right way.
yes.
I applied to the state, I need your blessing. And the town said, no, it's not a permitted use. And that's how we got here. So people are trying to do it the
I
right way.
think we have to make it a permitted use. Like, if you look at this, I mean, I was right, like here, you have, I'm a certified food protection manager in good standing with the accredited program. You have to be accredited. I mean, you have to go through a pretty hefty process with the state. So it's not like just some fly-by-night thing where, two people get together and say, let's start making cupcakes. There's a whole thing that they have to go through in order to even get certification to do it. So I think, I like Brand's idea that they have to allow us in, if there's a complaint or something, they have to allow an inspection, which is already sort of stated in the state rules anyway, and we just need to change our ordinance to allow this as a use, and then it's just a matter of where. Like, so, if we're going to allow it in residences, wherever, but I think we have to add in that they must get permission from the landlord, something like that.
Because over half our units are rental.
Right, so, and most landlords will probably go, no, you're running a business out of your house, and then you gotta pay, let's get real, but I think, those are the simple things we just need to put in and throw in an end. I don't think
And
we
the
need to.
registration form that we have the person complete has to be signed by the person who's doing it and the landlord.
Yes, it has to have some form of permission shown.
That's all. I mean, I think that's the simplest thing to do.
Karen, in terms of zones, would we want this just in the cars? Would we want to do it in the business zone, or the industrial zone? I don't see a need in it.
Well, you have grandfathered houses in the other zones.
That's the problem I have.
So you would just have to, they have here, you have to reside in the house. So I think what we can say is, if you're a rental, you must have proven permission from the landlord. But if you own your own home.
Dennis, this is Somerville. Let's make it the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Leave it at that, okay?
So here's just to throw an idea together. You take the home office ordinance. I think everybody has that in front of them. We rewrite it, take the home office wording out, and take item number 1, shall be only one such use in any dwelling. Number 3, should be operated by people who live there. No people coming in and
What
cooking.
page are you on? What page are you on?
So this is page 6.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So you use number 1, number 3, number 6, that it's got to be located. You can't convert your garage into a kitchen to do this. Number 6, that it can't be your entire house as a kitchen. You can't make your whole house a kitchen.
You don't want to incorporate not 5?
So, I did say 5. So you can't do you can't make your garage a kitchen or whatever. Number 6, that it can't be more than 20%. Number 7, you're not partitioning it. You're not making a separate kitchen. This is your kitchen. Then number 10, no change to the exterior of the building, no signs, no lights, no business stuff. Number 11, don't have any additional fumes, all that extra stuff.
Yeah.
So you're not bothering the neighbors. 12, no increased power usage, because again, it's your kitchen. 13, solid waste should not
Well,
be.
wait a minute. Are they going to have an industrial oven? That's the other.
No. So they
No.
Okay, so they can do it. Fine.
Yep.
Well, first of all, I can put an industrial stove in my house right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's not against any ordinance.
Disposal, 13, put that in.
Good.
14, the capacity, you shouldn't be more into the sanitary sewer. 15, deliveries have to be no more than regular UPS, whatever it is.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's very vague.
So you're not
You can't have
increasing.
tractor trailers.
Yeah, you can't have you can't have.
So,
I can't imagine anybody would be doing 50,000. Not that we can regulate that, but.
16, I don't think,
We don't need
16 is fine. Then add in that, the 17, instead of saying now, I was saying that you have to register with the town after, your application from the state. So change that. Add in, it's not 18 because I cut some out, but landlord approval, and then upon request of the town, allow inspections for health purposes. Those last few were ones I added that were in the home office.
Yeah, landlord approval
And then allow
Inspections.
allow
I
inspections.
think you have
at
to be
the
careful
request.
with number 6, the 20% thing, because
Okay.
some people's kitchens are pretty big in houses these days. So I think, we're not gonna enforce that.
I
So-
didn't.
I was just trying to say
Yeah,
that
no, I'm
you
just-
can't make your entire first floor kitchen
I don't think-
having
I don't
12,
think that-
12 ovens in it, but
No, but like, I think, you're
it's not
assuming
bad.
everybody's gonna be cooking. They might
Yeah.
not be cooking. They might be doing something else, but I think,
we can get rid of 6 then.
I think that's unenforceable, sort of,
Yeah.
Does that hit everything that everybody was
You're
concerned
right,
about?
there are a lot of houses with real big kitchens, and that's the main.
Yeah, so we can give it. I was just
And then the only other one is the non-resident employees. I'm trying to think, I thought I saw that one of the requirements was
That's
you
number
could have
4.
employees though.
I was more talking about you don't want. The reason I left that off is because I don't think we want to say you can't have somebody come pick it up. That's the only reason I left
Right.
that one out. Is if you bake a wedding cake, somebody can come pick it
Okay,
up.
food workers, I'm trying to see.
It says only a residence or permanent full-time residence of the dwelling and no other persons.
Right, but I think
Could
in the
cook.
state one, it allows you to have like an
But
employee.
we could be more strict if we wanted to. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the employee issue is an issue.
Okay, I mean, leave it in that you can't have an employee.
No, if it's a home-based business, I think that we should restrict to the people who live in the home.
Yeah.
Food workers are excluded from the kitchen. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's a typo. On Mike's letter,
Okay.
it should say ill food workers.
Yeah.
It's cut off, because on the
On the
application it
application
says
it says
ill.
ill food
Yeah.
workers.
I was like, why
So
would
it implies it, but if you want, I mean, only residents could be in there, so your husband and wife could do it or whatever, but not,
The kid
you
can
can't bring
help.
it outside down.
Right.
Again, if you're doing that well.
You're
Seven
doing more than
off.
$50,000.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it uses the term food workers. So
Yeah.
I would think that that's.
Kara, do you want to take a crack at doing that? And then what we'll do is, I guess tell Kevin we're working on it and we'll have something for him at the next meeting.
Kara, does DCA have any resources? Do you know if they would have anyone?
Either then, leave municipalities.
Yeah.
So we could get this.
And find out what other towns are dealing with this now, and if anyone has it in place already.
I will say that based on the article that I just read before.
Everybody has it but us. Is
Well,
what they make
no,
it
there's
sound
a lot.
like.
There's a lot of other towns. I mean, you got other towns that have basically banned it or denied applications. You got Sayreville, Parsippany, Livingston, Hamilton, Denville, Kinnon, Montclair, Richfield, Pennsauken, Pittman, and Mount Ephraim. Towns that were denying cottage food operator permits because they weren't. allowed by you.
I can see Montclair because their property taxes are more than 50,000 a year.
All right, let's move on.
We may not have a second meeting in August, right?
Council or?
Council.
I,
Let's plan
it's
on.
my understanding that several of us will be away, but there'll be a quorum. And and Kevin was indicating he'd like to have it to pay bills. So you need 5 members of the council, and I think you have, no, I'm sorry, you need 4 members of the council. I think right now,
first meeting in September.
let's
Let's
see,
get this sorted out first, yeah.
let's get it firmed up here, let the planning board recommend to us, and then maybe we could have it there.
As quickly as we can.
Let's do it right. I mean, this is novel territory. I don't want to rush it through and then have to go back and forth between the two bodies before we introduce. So let's introduce something that we're comfortable with. So, Tony, anything big on our next agenda yet, or is it too soon to say? For August.
Yes. I have no applicants on the August.
Okay, moving along, there's an item that I want to talk about, and I think that the time has come for us to take a look at the sidewalk cafe ordinance and see what needs to be tweaked and fixed. I think just about every restaurant that has a sidewalk cafe is in violation of one aspect or another.
Bernie, if I could preempt, last week, Kevin and one of his interns went out and measured all of the cafes. And it's my understanding that only 6 of them even had permitted cafes. So we have several issues. We have a majority of the cafes as not even permitted, and all but 2 of all the existing cafes are in compliance. So we have 2 that are permitted and in compliance, and the rest of them are either not permitted or out of compliance. So I agree wholeheartedly.
What I want to do is put together a committee of a couple of planning board members and representatives from the DSA and from restaurants. I want to have restaurant owners involved in it. And take a look at the ordinance and decide what provisions in that ordinance are enforceable or not, what should be enforced, or maybe what's not in there that should be in there. And just take a look at it and come up with what the rules are and make sure that every restaurant gets a set of rules.
And a permit application.
Right.
I can tell you that a couple of years ago, when we first started doing the sidewalk cafes, one of the biggest things the DSA was upset about were the planters that were around a lot of trees. Their planters, they had to move them, fighting with them, talking to them about it. They cut down a couple of trees. It was all out in war with the Environmental Commission because of how they were behaving.
So what we need to do is look at the ordinance,
yes,
make sure it makes sense, and hand out the rules and say you have until such and such date to comply, and everybody's going to comply. If you don't comply,
You shut down.
then you're subject to violations.
The sidewalks are important to real estate, and I'm glad our restaurants are successful, but the prime reason you have a sidewalk is for people to walk on.
The operative word is
And-
walk.
And in some locations, it's impossible to push a stroller, push a wheelchair, or even walk.
Right.
And
there are many places that have these planters that the DSA has been talking about.
Taking down, yeah, that's one of the
Getting rid
things
of
that
them,
we
which
talk
would
about.
open up solid walls with it. So I agree with you, having a DSA in on it is major critical. They have to be involved in it. They have to take action on their part. There are some very, very popular restaurants that many of us go to that their kids work at, and they go for drinks and everything else, and nobody wants to spoil the party.
Right, I understand, but
But they have to, it has
the
to,
borough's getting complaints
yes,
from
Pedestrians.
pedestrians,
pedestrians.
and we should be proactive.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm just saying that it's
So-
going to be unfortunate for some places, but it's going to have to be.
In the
done.
next few weeks, I'll get something put together.
Larry, I was on the council that passed that ordinance, and trust me,
Which one, 3 foot?
I was much younger then.
6 foot.
I was much younger then. No, I have to tell you, I forget how many feet it was, but we were talking about drinking on the street. Remember, it was the old DMC, we went through the whole litany of things. That's at least 25 years ago, because I know I'm on 25 years older. The ordinances too, but I agree with Bernie. The ordinance is unenforceable. It is not at the point where we're at the point now where we have to move forward with it.
Oh, I agree.
And I think
We agree
need to get
100%.
those planters out of there, because now they're just garbage containers.
There are ways to get the planters out.
And then we can move forward with it.
Sounds like you're gonna be on the
Well,
committee.
a lot of places,
No, that's my whole point. We've been working on this. Yes, I volunteer to be.
a lot of places the trees need to come out because they're buckled the sidewalk and that's a hazard.
And that is also a very contentious issue.
I understand.
I'm just telling you, just like when I go to the environmental meeting, I tell them like it is. They get all mad at me. And I'm like, listen, I'm just telling you what the reality is.
We get mad at you.
I know, but that's why I'm
Shoot the messengers, yeah.
If nobody's happy, I'm happy. That's
Well, let's
Would you
do
pass that to
last
Kelly?
year, get the trees for the time being. Remember, they give us shade.
They do.
They also take
pull
carbon
everything.
out of the
They
atmosphere.
take carbon out. I mean, there's
I mean,
a reason.
there's a reason to have
We're a nice
trees.
town because of those.
yes, and that's why we want to keep
If
them.
you go to some of our neighboring municipalities that want to be like Somerville, well, they're gonna have about 30 years worth of growth in their trees. They've got these little twigs. So I'm really not gonna blame the trees right now. I'll blame the environmental commission, not the trees.
All right.
You're missing a point.
At this point, I want to cut this a little bit short and open it up to the public for comment.
You don't want to hear my comment.
You're probably right.
Correct.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So
I
moved.
seconded.
All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
aye. All those opposed? Thank you.
Let's vote.